A husband or wife taking out their partner for a life insurance policy is a tale as old as time. We've all heard these types of stories at least once in our life. What you don't hear about very often is a mother recruiting, ready, her 17-year-old daughter's boyfriend to unalive her husband of 4 months so she could collect his $100,000 life insurance policy to pay for the tens of thousands of dollars in debt she has put them into. Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's so greatly appreciated. It truly, truly is. Before we get started, let me give you my usual disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Next, if you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so because it really helps me out and I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so let me set this stage for you. The story takes place in and around Cleveland, Ohio. The victim in this case is 45-year-old Fire Lieutenant William Walker. The mastermind in this story is Walker's wife of 4 months. Well, they're together 8 years, married 4 months. Uloma Curry Walker. Other key players in this case include Uloma's 17-year-old daughter, the daughter's boyfriend, Chad Paget, Chad's cousin, Chris Hine, and Ryan Doherty, who would end up being the person telling the majority of this story is Uloma's other daughter. And the juvenile daughter's privacy is still being kept private, which is fine. We can all respect that. In the months leading up to this, Uloma had run up tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt, some of the bills in William's name, and she had no way of paying for them. She and William had also just purchased a new home that they were moving into the night all of this happened. I would say long story short, but if I'm being honest, the details are pretty cut and dry. It's pretty much short story short. She ran up credit cards and bills. She couldn't pay for them. She decided to take out her husband because she wanted his money. Uloma was in debt way over her head. And the best way to get out of this debt for her was to get rid of her husband and make it look like a botched robbery. But because Uloma was less than smart, there's quite a few things that she did not consider that we'll get into a little bit later.
Hey family, so I decided that I am going to be doing story time here on TikTok because y'all, I just got a bunch of stories. So the story that everybody wants to know is, why is my mom serving a life sentence in prison? Well, come to find out, my mother was behind getting her ex-husband killed. And the thing is, it's not just, he just wasn't anybody. He was a lieutenant firefighter. And the way the story all came out, they didn't find out that my mother was behind it for 2 years after his death. The first situation, when he was originally found dead, he was shot and killed in their driveway. My brother calls me and tells me that he was shot and killed and that my mother was crying, losing it, gone crazy. The whole entire time, there ended up being a 2-year investigation to figure out what happened to him. Upon the investigation, it was found out that my mother had paid my little sister's boyfriend to find somebody to help her kill her husband. And not just kill him for no particular reason. She killed him to get the insurance money. But come to find out, his ex-wife was still on the insurance policy. So essentially, my mother did all of that for nothing. And then that's how she ended up becoming donkey of the day. She got him killed. It was a whole big thing. It was so sad. All for the insurance money that she wasn't even on a policy for. What makes it so bad is that a whole community was affected by his death. He was such an amazing man. He did so much for the community. It was just unfortunate that he had to die under those type of circumstances. So when it all came out, it was said that my mother got my little sister's boyfriend to hire his cousin, who then hired somebody else to be the shooter and kill him while he came back from getting his McDonald's. It's such an unfortunate situation, and it was so crazy that they ended up making a couple Lifetime movies, shows on Oxygen, and everything in between because the story was so wild. If you want to know the full story, comment below and I'll keep going with part 2 to give you the full scoop. Let me know what you think.
According to the juvenile daughter who testified against her mother along with her co-conspirators, the story goes as follows. Uloma, the daughter, and Chad were all in the car one day when Uloma brings up the idea to unalive her husband and make it look like a botched robbery. The daughter would also testify in court that her mother told her, quote, "No one would believe that I would hire a bunch of kids to someone when I know people that could," end quote. She promises Chad $10,000 with a $1,000 down payment and a bag of marijuana. Chad reaches out to his cousin Chris Hine to do it in October, but that never happens. From there, Chris Hine reaches out to Ryan Doherty, who agrees to do it for $800. November 3rd, 2013, at around 8:30 p.m., Uloma sends William out to McDonald's to get some dinner while she stays back and continues to pack up the home. Cell phone records show several communications between mom, daughter, and Chris Hine while Will was getting dinner. During this time, Chad and Ryan lie in wait for William by the garage with the purchase by Chris Hine. When Walker arrives home with the food, he puts his key in the side door, and before he could possibly even know what happened, he is hit 4 times with a 9mm. When police find him, the keys are still inside the lock. When paramedics arrive, their very first red flag was the fact that Uloma didn't have any blood on her. Okay, it is literally just human nature that a truly distraught partner would run up to their injured spouse and cradle them while waiting for help to arrive. For the majority of us, we would do this instinctively without a thought even crossing our mind. Unless, of course, you knew this was going to happen, you wanted this to happen, and you planned for this to happen. But to be fair, that is not proof enough to arrest somebody for. And in fact, it would take 2 years for Uloma to be brought to justice.
So, my sister comes to me and tells me that she just got an indictment from a grand jury. I'm like, girl, what is going on? And at the time, my sister was underage. So I'm like, what are you talking about? An indictment for what? And she said she didn't know. Come to find out, it was about her ex-boyfriend, his cousin, and a bunch of other people got indicted. During the indictment, I get her lawyer because I'm like, I don't know what the heck is going on. This sounds crazy. I've never been involved in anything like this, so I don't know what to do. So when she gets back from her trial, she tells me that her boyfriend happened to be at the house when our stepfather was. All of that information was not told during the funeral, during the whole thing. So I'm looking at her sideways like, okay, listen, I don't know what's going on. I don't care what's going on. You don't even have to tell me what's going on. But I do know you better tell that grand jury what you really know. Because at the end of the day, somebody is going to jail. And you need to make sure that it's not you. Because your life is going to be over. I don't care. I don't care who you got to tell on. I don't care who you got to snitch on. Your mama, your boyfriend, whoever. Whatever you know, you better tell them. A couple of days later, she comes back to me and tells me she has an opportunity to go back and talk to the grand jury again. I said, girl, I don't know what's going on, but you better tell them. She comes back. Her attorney, because she's underage, her attorney has been, talking to me. And because I paid the deposit, the attorney tells me that she's looking to be part involved in this damn trial, that they have all this evidence against my mother as being the prime suspect in the murder. I said, what? What do you mean? How is she the prime suspect? And they're like, well, it looks like your mother was after the insurance money. And so now we have everybody willing to do a plea to testify against your mother and find her guilty of all of this. And I'm blown away because I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, when did this happen? But I did know my mother was moving really, really foul. Things got really, really scary. And when I tell y'all, next thing I know, the media was swarming me, calling me, trying to get the scoop. It was crazy. Hey y'all, so part 3. So at this point, I am stressed out because I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to believe. Like, this is all a big, wash to me because literally I was with my mother planning this man's funeral. Because my mother was so distraught, she couldn't make some of the finalized decisions. Like, I wrote the obituary, I was talking with his ex-wife, I was helping his daughter. I just felt like, I don't know if y'all seen like that SpongeBob meme, and it's like all that stuff kind of going around and you're just like looking like, oh my gosh, like I had an anxiety attack because I couldn't believe all this stuff was happening. And, all these media outlets were reaching out to me. And so then when I was talking to my sister's lawyer, he pretty much explained to me that they found out my mother was the prime suspect because one of the kids, I call them kids because they were so young that my mother got to do this. They told a lot of people, to get some type of street cred that they got a body or whatever. So this cousin got picked up on a minor, charge. I think he had some weed or something on him. And so instead of him, taking that charge, he was like, whoa, instead of me doing jail time, what if I told y'all I can give y'all information on a mystery that y'all been trying to solve for so long, for the past 2 years, a high quality, big case that I can crack for y'all if y'all let me off. And because this dude had receipts, he was able to back this stuff up. And that's how they even found out about it. And this would happen literally 2 years after Will was killed. So come to find out, he has all the receipts and he starts singing like a bird and getting everybody's coming down. And so then my sister's involved because my sister knew about it and didn't say anything. And because she was underage, even though I have more stories to tell about my mother, but one of the things is my mother is very manipulative. And so we've had a really up and down relationship. And so the fact that my sister was able to control my sister like this, lets me know how desperate she really was. So what she tried to do is, have my sister know and kind of put that over her head that if she ever said anything, then she's going down too. And so I think that's why my sister originally was super scared and didn't know what to say to the grand jury. She was nervous, all of these things going on. It just ended up being such a big thing. That's why there's all these media outlets, all this stuff going on. It was nuts, crazy, unbelievable. So at this point, it has gotten really serious. My sister's lawyer comes to me and saying yeah, this is a high profile murder case. It's gonna cost about 50 bands for me to be your sister's attorney. And when that man said 50 bands, I said, excuse me, 50 what? 50, you expect me to get you 50 bands? I don't, sir, I'm 25. I got married. I'm actually taking my sister's child because everybody's getting indictments and they're locking people up like everybody that was involved. They are. My mother, they didn't actually go get my mother. My mother actually turned herself in. Like somebody convinced her to just actually turn herself in. Because I didn't know what their plan was, how they was going to get her. Because literally everybody else that was involved was in jail, singing like a bird, because everybody got scared once, they start throwing all this stuff in your face. These boys were like 19, 20, 21, like they're all looking at life if they didn't do the plea deal. My sister, because she was treated like a minor, she was looking at juvie life and all of these things. And so I'm looking like, wow, so this is really happening. Like this is for real. So I had to really start thinking and doing my research because I don't know what's going on. I'm literally begging this lawyer. Like I'm begging him. Literally, my sister was the only person that had a lawyer. Everybody else had public defenders. When I tell you it was nothing but God. You hear me? God, my God, that saved my sister. Like for whatever reason, that man found favor with me and my sister, and he's like, I'm willing, you pay me a little bit here and there, and I'm gonna make it work. Because I'm like, there's no way that my sister's gonna sit in juvie. I can't have my sister in juvie. And the crazy thing is, because my sister is in juvie, I can't even contact her. Because if you're in juvenile custody, the only people that you can talk to are your parents. And since my mother was in prison, the only other person that she could talk to was her father. So if I wanted to communicate with her, I had to communicate with her father. And the crazy thing about her father, y'all, he was my abuser. He sexually abused me from the age of 5 to 12. So that made things really difficult. Stand for part 5, y'all. So I know I just threw y'all for a loop because y'all wasn't expecting that to kind of happen in the story, but that's a whole separate story. But to give you a little bit of background, one of the reasons why me and my mother had such a strained relationship is because she knew that I was sexually abused, and she chose to not do anything about it until he had really harmed her. And once he harmed her, then she was ready to go to court. We did go to court, but it ended up being a mistrial because my mother lied in the trial because she also still wanted to maintain a relationship with him. And so because my mother was still like communicating with him, and I understand that was my little brother and sister's father, for me personally, it just didn't sit well with me. So when I got of age, 17, 18, I moved out away from my mother. And there's going to be another story time for that because there's so many other stories within that to even get, but just to give you the Cliff Notes version so we can get back to the original story that we were talking about. It was difficult. And so my sister did end up having to go to juvie, and she went to juvie, while they were awaiting trial, but I was able to get her out on house arrest with her attorney because then we also found out that she was pregnant again. And because she was pregnant, she was able, they didn't want anything to happen to her while she was in juvie under state care. So literally my niece saved her life. Like my niece saved her, and helped her with her attorney to kind of build the case on why she could not be in the actual juvenile facility until they awaited trial. Y'all, trial it was almost 2 years before they went to trial for this case. So everyone that's involved has been in jail awaiting trial because none of them made bond. They all had public defenders, and it just wasn't looking good. And so by the time the trial happened, I could not attend. I think the Lord did that on purpose because I was pregnant with my daughter, and when the trial began, I could have went into labor. You know, you're within that couple week frame where you can go into labor. So I did not go into labor, but I was getting updates every single day because I was just so distraught. Like, I could not believe what I had heard because I was so involved with helping her through this situation with the funeral and all this stuff. So it was a mess, y'all. Stay tuned for part 6. Hey family, so before we kind of get into the trial, I gotta give you a little bit of backstory so you understand my mother and kind of how she did a really good job at manipulating people. Like, my mother was the type of person that was very well spoken. She dressed really well. She spoke really highly. Like, you would think that she was from like a very good, you know, she had a very good upbringing, all of these things, because this is the persona she allowed herself to feel like, to be like. So she could get people to believe that the sky was green because she would have all these facts. Like, she just did a very good job at manipulating people. Like, that was her thing. That's how she caught people. Because lo and behold, in reality, my mama was a scammer. But she was just very good at scamming and getting people to believe what she said. Therefore, you wouldn't think that she was a scammer. So, for example, my mother had her own business. And this business was, so in Ohio, there's a very high Jewish population. And a lot of times when some of the Jewish get older, like, their kids don't send them to nursing homes. So instead of sending them to a nursing home, they will get them a private caretaker. And what my mother did is she became that caretaker by saying she was a nurse. So she got all the fake qualifications. Like, she made her own college transcripts, her own degrees, all this other stuff as a nurse. And so people hired her, and she got like a really good reputation because, you know, through word of mouth, that she was an awesome caretaker. And so she had this one client for a very long time, and it ended up going to the point that this client needed 24-hour care. And so by this client needing 24-hour care, my mother was technically supposed to be there all the time. But instead, she hired people, she didn't really hire people. She hired like me and my siblings. And when I stopped doing it, because my mother really wasn't paying us, she was just making us work for her. And so with my sister was like 16, 17 at this time, and she made my sister drop out of school and work for her. And the reason why she did it was not just for her to get money, but also to trick Will that my sister also lived part-time with her dad, which was never true. So when she wasn't living with my mother, she was at her dad's house, but in actuality, she was working for my mother. And so my sister got involved with doing this because she just really wanted to have this love from my mother. Like, my mother was just so harsh to us that we just wanted to feel loved. And so sometimes when you're under trauma like that, or you're in a situation, like, you'll do anything to please that person. And that's what happened with my sister. Like, my mom just manipulated her to kind of be involved with this and kind of help her with this situation because she knew what she was doing. Stay tuned for part 7 because it gets worse. Okay, so y'all kind of see already like how my mother was moving and how she was acting and what was going on. So when it came to my sister, my sister was the baby, right? And there's an 8-year difference between me and my sister. And so my sister at this time was like 16, 17. My mom is just being like really mean and rude to her and just not like being a mother, right? But to Will and his kids, like, she was the best thing since sliced bread. Like, if you go and look at any of the interviews, like when Will's daughter found out it was my mother, she was really shocked because my mother was literally a second mother to her.
And you're William's sister?
No. I'm William's ex-wife.
Ex-wife.
These are my children
Okay.
and William's children, yeah.
You called this. I'm going to just have you just start with what is it that you want to say on the heels of this announcement. It's been 2 years almost.
Yeah, so we just basically wanted to say that we are all in shock as a family. We have known Loma Curry for 8 years. Her and my dad were together. And so she was like a second mom to my brother and I. And so we are just shocked and distraught. My father did not deserve this at all. He was such a great man, a great role model to so many people in Cleveland. And we also just wanted to say that, like, my dad would want us to move forward and, just try to, I guess, find light in the situation.
Like, she treated those kids way better than she treated me and my siblings. It's almost like we didn't exist and that was her new family. So with my sister, sometimes I think she would get into it because my sister just wanted that love that she was able to show other people. She wanted to be able to feel that as well. And my mother just did not have the ability to do it because she was so focused on her own plan, her own end goal, whatever the case may be. So like I told y'all, she was a scammer, and what she was doing was sometimes my mother would make herself sick, and by making herself sick, it would almost appear as if she had cancer. So she told people that she was a cancer survivor, even though she had never had cancer, but mysteriously it came back. And what my mother would do is she would go to these different hospitals and kind of just make herself sick. So you know how you have a lot of power to control your brain, right? So like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where it's like you may think that you're sick, and so you think you're sick so bad that your body starts to resemble symptoms of that sickness, right? And so that's what my mother would do. And because she hopped around to all these different hospitals, no one really had real records of her illness and what was really going on. And since she had her own business, it was almost like she didn't have insurance. And so because she didn't have insurance, and Will was such a great person, he's like, yeah, like, of course, like, let's get married and you can be on my insurance, and then I can help you and we can just figure things out. Because they were also in the process of buying a new home. Literally, the day he got, that next day, they were set up to move to their it wasn't a brand new house, but it was new to them. They were moving out the hood and going out to the burbs because they were starting this new life together. But while they had got the house, some stuff had came up where it was a lot of credit cards, a lot of loans, and stuff out in his name that Will didn't know about. And so what he started to do was he got a private investigator to try to figure out what is all this going on and what's happening. So it was getting serious. So okay, y'all. So I told y'all that Will was, getting suspicious about what was going on. And so my mother, originally what I found out during the trial is that she reached out to my little brother and sister's father for help, to help her try to figure out how to get rid of, this situation, so Will wouldn't know that, my mother was behind all of it. Because I don't know if she was afraid or I don't know what her end goal was, right?
Something that Yoloma didn't do before hiring someone to take out her husband was to make sure that her name was on the life insurance policy. And what do you know? With just 4 months in, William hadn't found the time to change the beneficiary from his ex-wife to Yoloma. William's ex-wife would be the one to get the payout months after her ex-husband's death. I love that for her. I love that for her and her children, because they have 2 children together, 1 boy, 1 girl. While Yoloma would end up having to give away the majority of her stuff and move to North Carolina to live with a family member. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Maybe she thought that she was going to get all this money, and apparently they were in the process of updating his insurance policy, and he was adding my mother. However, he never finalized the policy. And so that made my mother, I guess my mother thought that that's what was like she was gonna get that money. Like she's like, oh, I'm about to get this money. Like, okay, so I need to get rid of him so I can get all this money and come up. So when my little brother and sister's father said that no, oh, I lost my earring. When my little brother and sister's father said no, that he wasn't going to help her, she reached out to my sister and asked her to ask her boyfriend. Because think about it, these dudes, they're young, they're from the hood. If you're from the west side of Cleveland, then you know that it's giving kind of like low income, poverty stricken, like they don't know anything. So my mother's employment ties into this because one of her long-term clients ends up dying and supposedly left my mother in the will. And this is what she told them, like she left her in the will and left her some money and this not BMW, and she would give them the money if I would give y'all $10,000 if y'all help me, get rid of him. And I guess she told them that he was beating on her and treating her all wrong and doing all this stuff. So that made them like, oh, you know what? Like, okay, we can do that. And to them, think about it. $10,000 is no money. So you already know kind of like the level of intelligence these boys have, because they think 10 bands is a lot of money. And it's like 3 of them. And so they were willing to split $10,000 in an old BMW to take somebody's life. Like, make it make sense. And so originally, I guess my sister's boyfriend told his cousin, because I guess my sister's boyfriend was gonna do it, but he's like, nah, I can't, you know what, I just can't do it. So he asked his cousin. His cousin was like, oh, no, I know somebody who be shooting people all the time. That's what he do. He's a hired hitman. So I'ma call him, because he know what's up and he kind of slow, and so he be doing all type of stuff. But stay tuned for part 9, because it gets even juicier, because it's even, the stuff you be like, wait, what, this really happened? And so stay tuned. Y'all, so at this point, they have hired this hitman who was like 19 at the time. He's kind of slow. He's known in the area for like robbing like Family Dollars and Save-A-Lots and stuff like that. So he's known as like, oh, he's gonna be the hitman. But they are all like planning all this stuff out. So my mother was the mastermind behind everything. And she is the reason why Will is dead. And because of that, and she's the mastermind, she got life in prison, right? Now, her co-conspirators would be my sister's boyfriend, his cousin, and the shooter. So my sister's boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend, he got 28 years. His cousin got 23 years. And the shooter, I think, got like 19 years, because he didn't really know about the plan. He was just doing his job. So he got 19 years. But all of them, like, because of them, Will wouldn't be dead without them. But because my mother was the mastermind, the top dog, she was the one that went down. But the crazy thing is, so my sister got in trouble because she knew about it and did not say anything. But at the same time, you have to realize my sister is underage and my mother is manipulating her and saying all this stuff. And so all of this stuff is going on. But then the crazy part, if you flip back and you start thinking about the funeral, like, stuff started making sense, because my mother at this funeral, y'all, like, I don't know if y'all seen like them crazy like black movies where the people be like jumping in the casket like, oh, take me with him, like, I can't do it, like, I can't live without him, I can't. That's how my mother was acting. My mother showed her ass at that funeral. You hear me? Showed her ass. She wouldn't stop crying. And then because he was a firefighter, there was like a lieutenant, there was a firefighter fund. They gave her money. I went to go pick up some of that money, because let me tell you, I was there as being like the good daughter to help her mother through this whole situation. I was just helping her. And then my sister was also being really weird during this whole time, because my mother was just letting her off with her boyfriend, and she was staying with her boyfriend and living with her boyfriend at 17. I'm up here and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, stuff was just not making sense. So now when all the pieces start coming together, you're like, yo, this is some wild shit. Like, I cannot believe all this stuff happened. And because of that, like, my sister got involved, and my sister, because she was underage, she was going to juvie, so she was charged as a juvenile. And so with it being a juvenile, oh y'all, I'm about to end time. So just stay tuned for the next part. Just so, like I was saying, it was 2 years. The trial took 2 years to happen. So by the time the trial finally happened, my sister ends up getting juvie life. So juvie life is until you're 21. However, by the time my mother because you have a trial and then you have sentencing. So by the time my mother got sentenced, my sister was 20 and turning 21 that next month. So y'all can't tell me that Jesus wasn't with my sister the whole time, because y'all think about this. My sister has been on house arrest for 2 years. Finally, by the time they go to trial, her part of her plea is she gets juvie life. Juvie life is until you're 21. My sister is 20 and turning 21 in three-ish weeks. And so by the time they sentence my sister, she ends up going to like a halfway camp situation for a couple weeks. Now, mind you, during this time when all this stuff went down, I ended up taking custody of my sister's son. My sister had a son with her boyfriend at the time when all this stuff was going on. Come to find out, you know, they had like a little, I guess y'all both in trouble. Y'all make a love child after all this craziness going on. So that's how he ended up being conceived. And my sister made me his godmother. And I remember when he was born, she told me like, hey, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to take care of him. Like, please look out for me. So when all this stuff went down, I literally lived in Oklahoma. I had to drop everything I had and go grab him because my sister's boyfriend's mother was acting a complete fool when all this stuff went down, because she was like, oh, well, if my son is going away, I'm taking your son away, and you ain't never gonna see your son if I have to wait for all this stuff, because she was clearly blaming my sister as the reason why her son decided to do what he did and be caught up in all this mess. And so it was just a lot going on. And so then after the sentencing, girl, all the shows start coming. I said donkey of the day because my mother was literally donkey of the day. She was on the Shade Room. There wasn't a place, a storyline, a news outlet that was not posting this story, because the crazy thing is she did all this and didn't get no money. So she looks like an idiot. She did all of this and didn't get no money. And then at the trial, she did not testify and she did not show any remorse. Like, she was just looking like, it is what it is. And like when my sister was on trial testifying against her, she was just looking at my sister like she wanted to kill my sister, because my sister was telling the truth. So long story short, after all of that, that's why my mother's serving a life sentence. She got life in prison, and then the first couple of years she was in denial, like she didn't believe that she was actually, in prison. So that's the end of that story. Wait till y'all hear the next story I'll tell.
As police looked through text messages between Yoloma and the others, they would use words such as ham, which is apparently street slang for a jun, after the murder. They found text messages that stated, "We have a body." In the end, Yoloma Curry Walker was sentenced to life in prison. Ryan Doherty was sentenced to 23 years to life. Chris Hine, the cousin, was sentenced to 28 years to life. Chad Paget, the boyfriend, was sentenced to 18 years to life. And the 17-year-old daughter was sentenced to 1 month in juvenile detention. If you guys are still here, thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you so very much. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't yet and you feel so inclined to, because it really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay safe out there.